Stranger Things ended a couple of weeks back, and as much as motherfuckers want to dunk on the show because it had a bad ending, I actually have some pretty good things to say about the show in its totality. You know what I mean? That being said, though, about the ending, I'm not saying that it's good, but I'm starting to see a little bit of a pattern. You know what I mean? Y'all said the same shit about AOT. I never watched Game of Thrones, but apparently that ending was trash too. Now we're telling me that like Stranger Things, the ending is garbage. I'm feeling like we just want to dunk on shit because it's fun to dunk on shit. You know what I mean? And that's fine because I like to dunk on shit too on the internet. But like let's just be mindful of the fact that like some of these endings, mainly AOT, is not as bad as motherfuckers will have you believe. Alright. When it comes to Stranger Things though, I do think the show considerably fell off. I don't think that it should have went 5 seasons. Regardless, it did. I'm happy that it's over now and like we got to see it off. But I can agree with motherfuckers that are saying that the writing clearly, took a step down. Past, I want to say, even low-key season 2, right? Like, season 3 was good. I think that was the one that everybody just kind of agreed was terrible, right? Season 4 was decent, from what I remember. But regardless, it should have never even gotten to that point. Now that, the show's over, we get to look back with our rose-tinted glasses. I actually want to take a look at, like, Steve Harrington. Because I actually think that, faults and all, Stranger Things came at a point in my life, at least, where there was a lot of life lessons that I learned at the right time with the show. And I think Steve Harrington mainly is my favorite character. And I think that that's because it's not that I see a lot of myself in Steve, but Steve Harrington's perspective throughout the show shows me like, God damn, it's hot in here. Hold on, let me crack open the window. Yeah, I think Steve Harrington goes through an arc that you don't see a lot of times in shows, right? Because he starts as essentially like, well, he's not the villain of season 1, but he's one of the villains of season 1. And by the end of season 1, he's one of the good guys. And I know what you motherfuckers are thinking. You're like, we've seen this before in Vegeta, in Zuko, in who's another motherfucker? Nothing really is coming to mind, but you get the point. Let me tell you why it's different, right? Steve Harrington, alpha male. I mean, leader of his friend group. He's got a whole bunch of gremlins running around the school. Like, he really does run shit. This is what I'm trying to tell y'all. Steve's life spirals by the middle, or like the 75% through season 1. After that point, I swear to God, this man cannot catch a W to save his life. Steve loses his girlfriend. Steve loses his friend group. Steve loses his social status. By season 2, Max's older brother Billy comes in, dunks on that man on the court. Like, I'm talking like, yeah, I don't even know who it is, but you know when Shaq puts his nuts in somebody's face and pushing them over? Like, that's the type of disrespect Billy was putting on Steve. So he's got no friends. He befriends these losers, the nerdy kids from like 2 or 3 years younger than him. He has to work at an ice cream shop. The ice cream shop has him wearing this bogus ass Popeyes the Sailor costume, right? As a matter of fact, his coworker thinks he's a loser. You know what I mean? Because his best friend is Dustin. Not only does the shorty he works with think he thinks he's a loser for hanging out with Dustin, Steve, starts to develop feelings for shorty. Come to find out, shorty's gay, 1, and 2, back in the day when, Steve was on top of the world and going through all these women, Robin didn't even give a fuck about Steve more than she gave a fuck about the person that was standing next to him. You know what I mean? And I feel like psychologically, that takes a lot of, that takes its toll to really go from, you know what I mean, thinking nobody could touch you. You know what I mean? Like, you at the top of the food chain to being, relegated to like the scraps. Not only are you a loser, but you're a loser to the losers. Like, you don't see that happen. You don't see that happen often. Most of the time, like when you go from being evil to being good, you provide some kind of value to the good guys. Now that you're part of them, right? Steve goes from being the most popular kid in school to being the butt of all the jokes because he's stupid to the Nancy Wheelers, the Jonathan, and the nerd group. And I think that's important. I think that makes a difference, right? Because I feel like a lot of times with the way stories are told in Hollywood, it's like, a happy ever after. But the reality of the situation is that's not always what happens. Sometimes you can just lose all your shit and nothing is ever going to, rectify that or balance those books just because you've decided to become a good person. Good things can happen to good people. good things can happen to bad people. And, bad things can happen to bad people the same way bad things can happen to good people. And I think that that's like a nuance, and that's a, I don't know, a layer of complexity that I don't think that, you see very often in movies and TV shows. I really think that like Steve Harrington not only had to deal with, kind of like the Toy Story. I was gonna say the Toy Story story, but it's the Toy Story. Kind of like what happened in the Toy Story, where Woody, for example, has to find out that he's not the favorite toy anymore. Buzz is. But by the end of the movie, Andy makes it clear that like it's like, as much as I fuck with Buzz Lightyear, I still fuck with Woody. Steve Harrington never got that. Steve Harrington was told that he was a bum, was told that he was stupid, and that nobody gave a fuck about him. And really, by the end of it, that was just the reality of his life. Steve Harrington never became the most popular kid in school again. Steve Harrington doesn't even end, the show with a legitimate love interest. Steve Harrington never becomes the cool kid again. Everything that was taken from him in season 1, my man's never gets back. And I think that like what makes this character development so good, because character development, especially in the anime realm, gets thrown around like crazy. Like it's the end all be all for what makes a character good. I just want to make it clear that's not where I stand, but I do think it's something to appreciate when it's done right. Steve Harrington not only had to come to terms with the fact that, he is no longer as popular, to lose all his social status, but he also never got a chance to get it all back. It wasn't a matter of, if I become a good person, the writers will reward me with all the riches that were taken from me. Steve Harrington had to learn to almost redefine his personal value. Not being the best basketball player doesn't mean that, you're nothing. Not being the most popular kid in school doesn't mean that you're nothing. Not getting the girl that you like, or the most attractive girl in your social circle, doesn't mean that you're not a person of value. And I think that it's really dope that Steve Harrington, was able to come to those conclusions. You know what I mean? It's never stated, but the vibe Steve Harrington was giving season 1 was like definitely like red pill adjacent. So for him to go, from somebody like that, or at least somebody that is friends with people like that, to not only find out that a girl he's interested in is not interested in him, layer 1, layer 2, that the girl that is not interested in him, that he's interested in, is gay, that's layer 2. Layer 3, not only is he finding all these things out, but he's still willing to be her friend. I think that, we just gave you a character development lasagna. That's 3 layers. 3 layers that, like, you might not even expect a Steve Harrington to be able to have in season 1. I think that's dope. I didn't even want to name this character, but for example, Sasuke goes evil, comes back. He still gets to get Sakura, right? Zuko, for example, goes from evil to good, but he gets everything. Zuko gets to be the most important on Team Avatar. He gets to be Kevin Durant in the Warriors in 2017. You know what I mean? And by the end of the show, he's president of the United States. You see what I'm saying? Like there's levels to this shit. I really just feel like it's an important lesson in life, especially for the motherfuckers who peak in high school. Like it's an important lesson to realize that, like, listen, if you're a superficial person and all that shit, you know what I mean, you're no longer the prettiest. You're no longer the most athletic. You're no longer the best at anything. You know what I mean? Because that's really like, that's how life will get you. You can go from being, the number 1 performer in your high school, in college, wherever you're at. And some motherfuckers will continue to be number 1 for the rest of their life. But the rest of us, you're gonna find yourself with the bigger fish. What's that shit Qui-Gon Jinn said?
There's always a bigger fish.
You're going to find that bigger fish. You're going to go from being a big fish in a small pond to a big fish in an ocean. It's an important step in your growth, or in my growth at least, maturing. Realizing that your self-worth should not come from how big of a fish you are relative to the pond that you're in. And I think that's a dope story. And it's really dope for him to end the story so happy. Even though, if season 1, episode 1, Steve saw who he was today, he'd be a loser. By his own metric, Steve Harrington's story ends with him being a loser. And I think that's dope. Peace.